on blast.
We are back, just like the All-Stars, just like Darrell, just like AC/DC. We are back, just like Backstreet Boys. We're back. I'm John Chidley Hill. Oh, he's doing the dance. He's doing the Backstreet Boys dance. I got a text, so I looked away and I just was leaving Sheldon hanging.
You missed it, right? I'm like here doing my Backstreet's back dance and nothing. But it's fine. Still back. We're here. Episode 2 of the Challenge All-Stars. And, you know, they left us on a bit of a cliffhanger here, which was all right, though, because I'm in. I got to say that with the music selection, we talked about it last episode, with some of the new characters, Derek, I mean, we don't like Derek, but in the sense of how this show operates, you need that villain, right? There are a lot of times where, as I keep calling him a bootleg Johnny Bananas, but the point remains, whether you were rooting for or against Johnny Bananas, you had some vested interest. And Derek, you know, I think his intentions were good, what he was trying to do here, because we'll pick things up right where last episode ended, right? So Derek and Jody, they go to Ayanna and they're trying to find out, who do you guys want to go against in the elimination, right? And I think this was a very smart move. I'll say this. I think this is a smart move because you're going to get the blame for whoever the four names that you pick, right? How do you shift some of that blame? Well, you just say, oh, well, this is who they wanted to go to. We didn't know who to pick, so we just left it up to them. Smart play. I think that's a great play. But I also think Ayanna was onto them and wasn't going to fall for it.
Yeah, I loved the attitude she brought where she said, you know, she was a Division I track star. And she says, you know, in track, you can't choose who you're going to run against as a track athlete. So I'm not going to choose who I'm going in against. Totally correct. And also, to your point, you know, when it all comes out, like who asked for who got nominated, she just says straight up, I didn't ask for anyone. Like I'll take on anyone. Like I'm competing against myself. And that's airtight. Like no one can get mad at that. And one of the things I think that distinguishes this version of the challenge versus, we'll call it the regular challenge, is that everyone's more mature, which makes it like a better and a worse show. Mm-hmm. Like in some respects, it makes it a little more boring. I'm sorry, but like people are not making stupid mistakes in terms of their personal lives, right? But in terms of like situations like this, everyone's way more reasonable. So like when Ayanna's like, I'm like, she's not cocky about it, but she's like, like I'm just going to compete against whoever and I'm going to try my best. And everyone's like, all right, fair enough. And there's no further discussion. I'm not sure she did it for a game move, but it was a good game move. You know what I mean?
And as you said, I just like her mentality. It doesn't matter. What's something we talk about all the time. Some people want the smoke. Other people don't want the smoke. She clearly wants the smoke and just said, whoever I'm going against, whatever, send in whoever, I'm good. Meanwhile, on the flip side, there's your boy, Nehemiah, who, if we're going to say Derek is doing too much all the time whenever he's on the challenge, Nehemiah is also definitely doing way too much. And I mean, his gameplay, he's trying to figure it out, right? Because he's talking about how normally he gets victimized by trying to be the nice guy or whatever. So he's going to switch it up now, right? So when Derek comes and asks him who he wants to go against, he says Ryan. But his reason for wanting to go against Ryan is because he wants to go against someone he already beat in a challenge. Even though
2008.
Like, what? Like that makes no sense. Not at all, because you are both different people than you would have been, 15 years ago.
Can you imagine
understand how that's your mindset?
Can you imagine if you were in high school and you're in like, I guess we'll say grade 12, because I think most of our listeners would not know what OAC was. But like you're in grade 12 and like, I don't know, you have to do some sort of athletic competition, and they're like, who do you want to go against? And you're gonna say, oh, well, I smoked so and so when we were 5 years old on the playground. People are like, yeah, solid logic. Like, what? Like, that's a long ass time. Like, that is a ridiculous amount of time to say, like, oh yeah, no, I beat that guy more than a decade ago. Like, there,
Makes
what?
no sense.
Makes no sense. I'm always torn on Nehemiah.
Yeah, and none of it makes sense. So he says he wants to go against Ryan or he wants to go against Derek. And yeah, I mean, those choices, I agree with Ryan. Ryan at some point brings up the fact, why don't you just say that you want to go against me because you think I'm the weakest person here, right? Like, and to me, again, that's bad gameplay by Nehemiah, because I think I blatantly would just tell people I'm picking who I think are the weakest competitors, and Derek, who won, Derek K, right? Derek K.
Yeah, Derek K.
The way that I would play it if I'm Nehemiah, I blatantly tell everyone, Derek K came to me to ask me who I want to put in, right? I told him who I wanted to put in.
People I thought I could beat. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm leaving that up to him. So now when Derek K flips the switch, right, and puts in Steve, when really we know he's trying to put in Steve, thinking Steve's going to go in and Steve has a good chance to take out Nehemiah, everyone can see Derek K is playing a shady game right off the bat. And that would have been the perfect play.
Well, it would have been the perfect play. Nehemiah sort of recovers from what is maybe a minor blunder. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about Derek and his outfit.
Okay.
So he's wearing sort of it's a shorts and t-shirt suit.
It's like,
I guess it's a matching pair.
Outfit. Yeah, it's a fit.
It's like I'd call it. I'm sure this is not the right description, but it's like an Arizona style pattern.
Oh, okay, maybe.
Right.
I think. Okay, here's what I'll say. Okay. So this becomes a big deal because Steve kind of walks by him and disses him, and if he didn't diss him, it's definitely a sneak diss. If it's not a full on diss, it's a sneak diss, basically telling him you can't pull that off, bro. Like, that might be a nice fit, but that ain't for you, right? I mean, another way, you're doing too much. I will say, I'm not that mad. We're not Derek fans, but I'm not that mad at Derek's outfit, because to me, that kind of had like some beach vacation type vibes to it, and that's the scene that they're in. So I'm not mad at him for rocking that at all. That's just me. Could I pull that off? Probably not. But I'm not mad at him for that.
I think, like, I certainly know people who, if they don't own something like that, they own something like, yeah, they have fits that are like that. Mm-hmm. I think Steve's issue, because the first thing he said is, that's what you're wearing to deliberations. Like, I think his upset wasn't like, Derek, you can't pull that off. I think it was, is this like the place? And like, that might be a little bit on Steve taking it too seriously.
Like, well, what does that mean? Like, he's supposed to wear a suit?
Well, I think he's saying that it's supposed to be like a respectful scenario. I'm not agreeing with ridiculous. Steve. That said, Derek is super mad. Like, Derek is mad. Like, he's too offended by Steve's comments.
You know what I get from that? I get from that he was insecure about the outfit to begin with.
Yeah.
He wasn't confident enough in the outfit to begin with. And something Steve said was, hey, I can maybe see that on Tech, but I don't know that about you. And why would you say something like that? Because Tech is obviously more confident in himself and in whatever he would be rocking. We saw the pink suit that someone said looked like Pepto-Bismol or something like that. Or maybe he said that. But the point remains, you got to be confident to pull that off. And I don't think Derek was. So the first slight or the first comment that might not be positive about it just reaffirms his insecurity to begin with. And I think that's why he was a little offended by it, because he's like, oh, really? Like, he's sitting there with Jody and he's like, really? Oh, well, might not have been a good time to make fun of the person's outfit, is it?
I also think
you're going to vote him in because he didn't like your fit.
I also think that there's a key thing that happened. My impression, and like I could be wrong, but my impression was Derek changed into his monkey suit for this scene because he's trying to be a producer, right? Like he put on this fit, and then like he and Jody have those conversations, but to that point, he's only seen Jody, Nehemiah, and Ayanna in like in that fit. So like he walks down the stairs, he's on his way to go outside to like have this conversation with Jody and like make their decisions. And Steve is like the first person they run into, and he like is like, ooh, like that's what you're going with? And then Derek walks through the rest of the house, and at that point he sees what everyone else is wearing. And so it's not just that Steve put down what he was wearing. Derek sees that he's the only one that's going to be dressed like that for this upcoming scene. So I think he, like, you ever show up somewhere and you're like, ooh, I am underdressed, or ooh, I'm overdressed. And like, and I think so Derek had that thinking like, ooh, like Steve like sort of made fun of me, but also everyone else is just like in hoodies and sweats and like, ew, you know what I mean? Like I think it compounded the issue that he saw that everyone else was dressed perhaps their age, and it made him a little less confident.
Yeah, and I mean, he goes from that moment to calling himself such a great chess player. Right? Like
he might be the best human chess player who has ever lived.
Okay, like what are we talking about here? Do you know what I mean? I just don't get Derek. Again, doing too much. How about trying to win it's the challenge? How about that? Sorry, win the challenge all-stars. How about that? Okay. Jeez.
So, as we said, they nominate Leah and Casey, Steve and Derek.
Yeah.
Nehemiah is mad that he didn't get anyone he asked for, which is not quite right. One of the two names he said was nominated. I do like seeing Nehemiah a little mad, but like behind Derek K, he's the one that is doing the most. You know, you know you're in trouble when you're having a conversation with Brad, and Brad is being the voice of reason. Like, you know, Nehemiah, you should have done better. Like that's no one nominated you, Nehemiah. Like,
agreed. And then on top of that too, Jody starts crying as she's telling Derek that he is one of the nominees, and it's like, homegirl, it's a very first day. Like, chill out. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all right. It's part of the game. I know it's been a while. Chill out. You know. Derek, though, again, for someone with that much confidence, you would think that he has a better pulse on what the house is feeling, because in his mind, he just thought the house was going to vote for Steve because he's a new guy. And I'll give credit to Nehemiah here, or maybe to his crew that he huddled up with. And they were like, well, just go tell everyone who you want to go for, which he does. He goes around and tells the house, I want to go against Derek. And hey, cool. But it also, you know, what did you think of that gameplay just from both Derek's standpoint in terms of assuming what the house is going to do, and then Nehemiah's standpoint and getting the house to do what he wanted them to do?
I mean, Derek blew it. Derek is clearly coming in with the same attitude they had last season with Mark, where they remember how they did all that shit where they made like a crown and they would call Mark the Godfather and like all that. Like, Derek still thinks he's running the house, and he's not. Like, he's firmly not. And also, this is how I think Nehemiah recovers, is that he goes around and he's like, listen, here's who I really want. Please vote this way. Because in this situation, I don't know if Nehemiah recognizes it, but in this situation, people don't want to have to make a decision. So if you can make the decision for them, they're going to be grateful. Because especially they know
so early in the game.
Yeah, because they know that, like, let's say they vote in Derek and he comes back and he's mad about it. They just have to say, listen, man, Nehemiah asked for you. I liked Nehemiah. I'm just rolling with my guy. And that's it, right? Like, whereas with Steve, if you vote for Steve, it's a like sort of an FU to Steve, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But then,
totally agree.
This is the most important thing, Sheldon. It's prom night. They're having a party. How did you feel this party stacked up as a resident party scene on the challenge expert?
Well, first off, I thought it was a pretty solid party. It looked like it was fun. It looked like people were having a good time. There was singing, there was dancing, it looked like a good party. It looked like a pretty good party. But my song of the episode, to get that out of the way, was the Spice Girls. And it led to my question for you. Who was your favorite Spice Girl?
That's a great question.
Yeah. And of course, my questions for John are also the questions for the audience. So again, hit us up. Let us know what you think. Inquiring minds would like to know. Because I can tell you that mine were very easy. It was a tie between Scary Spice and Baby Spice. That was just
wow.
Yeah.
So I was just going to lead off and say, definitely not Baby Spice. Like, she is my least favorite of the Spice Girls.
Wow. Okay. That's fair.
But
that's fair.
I would say Ginger Spice and Posh Spice. But like, I respect all of the spices except Baby Spice, who again I like the least.
Okay. Are we really doing a deep dive here? But I want to know, like, why? What did Baby Spice do to anyone?
I just this is gonna get me in so much trouble.
No. I don't want to get you. Hold on. There's a thing where Jalen and Jacoby would always say to Jalen Rose, "Don't get fired. Don't get fired. Don't get fired."
Well, I won't. I mean, my. This is totally subjective, and to each their own. I find Baby Spice the least attractive.
Okay.
And she also does not strike me as that talented.
Okay.
And I'm going to put this out here. I don't think Posh Spice is that talented either. Like, I think the strongest singers are Scary, Sporty, and Ginger.
Okay.
But certainly when I was a youth, I found Posh Spice most attractive. You should probably know this. She is definitely my type. Like, people make fun of me because I have a very strong type. And Posh Spice would be it. But yeah.
I love how you sat up to say that. People watching the video.
Well, it's important. You got me fired up.
Got to say it with your chest.
I also have to say,
people listening to this pod right now, and they're like, I can't believe these guys weren't going to do these episodes.
I also have to say that this is going to sound like a cop-out, but Spice Girls is also my song of the episode. And like this, well, because you said it too. I didn't want to seem like I'm just biting your style, but I just, as I grow older, like when we were in our teens, you didn't toxic masculinity being what it was. You didn't want to be like, yeah, like I really love Spice Girls you could get away with. But like you didn't want to say like, oh, I like that Backstreet Boys song or I like that NSYNC song. But now that I'm old and death is around the corner, like I am so into those 90s and early 2000s pop songs. Like last episode of You Killed It, we talked about Backstreet Boys versus NSYNC. I can go so hard on like deep cuts. Like give me some LFO. You know those guys, Summertime Girls, or End Together. Do you remember? What was that band? I'd
have to actually know this. For a lot of those ones, I'd actually have to like hear the song to be like, oh yeah, I remember those.
Or O-Town. Like I've been talking about O-Town a lot lately. Or for some CanCon, do you know what's a banger track? Faded by Soul Decision featuring Thrust. Do you remember that song?
I do. But it's so funny because if there are people who aren't our age or older listening to this, I feel like their way of consuming music is so different now, right? Because again, we sat down and watched in Canada Much Music, which is the equivalent to MTV for our American listeners. But you would sit down and watch music videos. You'd watch TRL every day, or for us, it was Much on Demand, right? And you would just be watching whatever. And, you know, to hear, you know, whatever hip hop song I wanted to hear, Biggie and Tupac or Jay-Z or whatever, to hear that, I also needed to hear the Shania Twain song or the Backstreet Boys song or the Alanis Morissette song that was on, right? To get to the song that I actually wanted to listen to. So by sheer osmosis, you would also know these tracks. Like I talked about it a couple pods ago, right? The Alanis Morissette doc that was on HBO, the Music Box. And I was like, wait, I know these songs. How do I know these songs? I've never bought an album. I've never like downloaded this track, like, but I know these songs. And it's just from how we grew into listening to music. Whereas now I feel like it's way different, right? Nobody's
They're
sitting
all siloed
down and
off.
having it programmed.
Yeah. It's all algorithm based. I also have to point something out to your point that for our American listeners, I'm sure we have American listeners who are like, oh yeah, like, who are our age, who understand, like, yeah, you had to watch, like, if you wanted to get to that Eminem track, you also had to listen to 98 Degrees. I know, I'm sure there's people listening that understand that, but I also have to point out that in our country, there's like, what, 20% of the population where English is not their first language, they speak French. So we also had to listen to French songs. Like, there'd be like, they'd be playing the like top 30 on Much Music, and they'd be like, next up, Rock Voisine. And you'd have to like sit through a 3-minute French song where you didn't understand any of the lyrics because you wanted to get to Wigfield Saturday Night. Like, you had to like sit through some like different songs that weren't even in your native language in Canada.
Well played. I don't even know where we're at in this episode. Derek,
we were talking about the prom night, and we should talk about, this is going to be a tough segue, but Derek.
Oh, I meant the other Derek. But yes, as we segue to Derek, who's going, the prom night. So here's my thing that I was going to say about that. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really feel comfortable enough going into this conversation because I felt like it just caught me way off guard. Right? Like it just kind of came out of nowhere. And I was kind of like, whoa. And I wasn't ready for that. Right? Like I felt like I was watching one show and then they made like a hard turn into another show. And my biggest reason why I don't really feel comfortable talking about it is because I caught myself in the moment being like, oh, really? Like you came on this show after that happened? And then I caught myself because I'm like, that's not for me to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not for me to, like, I don't know anything about that man, much less his situation or his relationships or his family, to then be able to, like, sit here on camera in front of a microphone and be like, comment on it at all. Right? Because I don't know. Yeah. I can't tell you how to grieve. I can't tell you how to go through that, what you should do or should or shouldn't do. But again, it also just caught me really off guard. So that's most of the reason why I just feel kind of uncomfortable, I'll say, discussing that part of the episode.
I will say, so like when he first said, you know, my younger sister, the day before I left to film the show, I learned that she took her own life. Mm-hmm. At first I was like, man, I wouldn't be able to go on the show in that circumstance. But then I realized I was sitting in my own judgment, and that like I thought about when my dad died, and I remembered all the things I did that maybe I shouldn't have done, like how, I don't want to say distracted you get, but I think it's part of the grieving process that it's not, there's like a moment in the grief process where the fact that your loved one is gone isn't yet real. So it's hard, like if you think about going on the show, you'd be planning for weeks, if not months. And it's when you suddenly lose someone, it's hard to change gears because like, how could, like in Derek's circumstance, like how could my little sister be dead? Like that can't be real. Like I'm just gonna, you know what I mean? And also he explains it really well. His little sister was his biggest fan. Like she loved that he was on the real world that he had been on the challenge. So I also understand that he would want to go on for her because it's what she would have wanted. And like, I understand that. And I also have to say, you and I, well, I'll put it on me. I often make fun of people who will say like, oh, I'm on the challenge for these people. Or like, we joke all the time. Like we hear Corey say like, I'm here for my girls. Like I'm here for my kids. Or we heard Bettina say like, I'm here for all the small town girls last season of the challenge. And like, I'm always like, okay, just say that you're here for the money, which is an acceptable reason in my mind. But when Derek said that he's there for his little sister, I was like, now this is motivation. Like this, now I get it. If this was a connection he had with his younger sister, he literally like just learned, like it was a day old, and then he got on the plane. Like, now this is like, for once I'm like, yeah, I get why you're saying this is for my little sister, for Brianna. So I like I said, off the hop, I was like, I don't know that I'd be on this show. But when I thought about it a little bit and processed it, I totally get where he's coming from. I have to say, I've always liked this Derek Chavez. He's like, he hasn't been on a lot of challenges, but he seems just like a really nice, good guy. So you and I always talk about how we'd want to spend, like, would we want to spend time with this person? Like, I would for sure, like, I imagine if we were coworkers, he would, like, I'd be friendly with him, you know? Like, he just seems like a nice, normal, fun guy, pleasant to be around. So my condolences to him. And I'm sorry that he got nominated, given that we know all this now in hindsight. But yeah, you're right. It was a hard right turn, but it was also the way things played out.
Yeah, totally. Right. And, there's no real good way to segue from into that or segue out of that other than we just move on. Right. So, we continue within this episode towards the arena, and, the arena, I mean, this was an interesting elimination, right? So the first thing that we find out is that it's going to be individual, right? So it's Derek versus Nehemiah. And then why am I drawing a blank here all of a sudden? Ayanna, wow, in English. I don't know why I can't speak.
And Leah.
And this is interesting because we saw Ayanna and Leah have a moment at the party where they kind of connected and bonded and discussed that there's so many similarities between the two of them, both being moms, both being on the show, both like having a moment where they're like, hey, yeah, this is our chance to like have some fun and reconnect with this part of our past and do something really cool to show our family, show our kids and whatever, right? So you have that matchup. And the elimination is pretty straightforward, right? Nothing that complicated. You basically have to solve a puzzle. Once you solve the puzzle, you then get a chain. You attach a chain to these like huge coffins. You have to drag the coffin across to the other side and attach the chain to the link at the other end. You do that 3 times. First one done, wins. And first up, we get Derek and Nehemiah. And I want to ask you something, and I'm asking you this genuinely, and I don't know, maybe I'm sure someone in the comments will tell us, although I feel like that mostly happens during our normal challenge seasons. I don't know how much it happens on All Stars, but I firmly believe that Nehemiah won this by a lot, and they just edited it to make it seem as if it was a little closer, especially once we got towards the end. Because the way that it just seemed like, I don't know how Nehemiah kept getting the last math problem incorrect, but also a couple times it looked like it just looked the same when he asked for the check and TJ's like, nope, that's not it. Right. But either way, the way that it cut together, it didn't, like, to me, it kind of looked like, especially with the last one, how Derek caught all the way up. It seemed that they made it seem closer than it was. What did you think?
I mean, I if they did cut it, they fooled me. Like, I thought it looked pretty close. You could be right. It had not occurred to me. And there have been other eliminations where I've seen it and been like, oh, they cut this to make it look closer than it was.
Mhm.
But I mean, you could be right. But I do certainly, I mean, put it this way, they had to move 3 coffins. Certainly, Derek was on his 3rd coffin.
I got you. Okay. Okay.
Right? Like, there's no doubt of that. So, I mean, my question for you was, they said that these coffins on weighted sleds weigh 300 pounds. How do you think you'd do at this?
First off, there's a 0% chance those things weigh 300 pounds. 0% chance. Like, come on. That's like, I know you're a big wrestling guy, John. When they have the guys come out and they just give up the fake weight. It's like, from parts unknown, weighing 500 pounds. Or the tag team, and they're like, weighing a combined 850 pounds. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what? Like, you just made that up. And cool, I get it, right? Like, it sounds cool. But like, come on, man. You're not dragging 300 pounds like that through sand. You know how hard that is? Come on, man.
So I was curious, because at first I'm like, there's no way I could do this based on that 300-pound number. And then I was like, well, I do push weighted sleds, but I don't actually know how much they weigh. Like, I just put some weights on them and push them. And a weighted sled without any weights on it weighs 100 pounds. Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I could do this. Like, and to your point, I don't think it weighs 300 pounds. Like, I think that was a bit of an exaggeration. So we already said it. Nehemiah beats Derek pretty handily. But then, I mean, there's not even any suspense to the women's competition.
No.
Ayanna
Leah can't even, she doesn't know how to use a carabiner.
Yeah. Which I understand. Carabiners are tough. But Ayanna smokes it. Like, Darrell says it. She could have beaten half the men in there. And I think part of the key is Ayanna works smart, not hard. She understands, she avoids the mistake that both Nehemiah and Derek made. That is, they were pulling from the very end of the chain. You don't want to do that. You want to be as close to the sled as possible. And so she was grabbing it from, like, basically keeping it as taut as possible. So it's just like over her shoulder. And she just rocked this. She looked great doing it. So good on her. And then she helps Leah finish.
This was a moment.
This is nice. This was super nice.
Hold on. Before we get to the fuzzies, right? The fuzzy part of this, we got to give Ayanna credit because she was beasting, right? Like, first off, she's just going through and she's like swearing through it, right? Like, she's just yelling like, come on, motherfucker. Come on, motherfucker. Come on. While she's like pulling it. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. But I think that's also a good look because you're telling the other competitors, you don't want none of this, right?
No.
Like, all of the other women that are involved in this, like, you don't want to come down here and see me in an elimination. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, getting to the moment of this whole thing, I thought it was really cool because, as much as I made all these comments about what this episode or what this season of the challenge was, or what it was going to be, that was a moment that actually showed you what it is. And it is more than just coming on this show and trying to make money because I used to be on a reality show 20 years ago. I thought it was really cool because it shows a difference in maturity level of the people on the show, right? And I think that's really cool because I think that, Ayanna wins. We talked about the connection that she made with Leah at the party that they had or whatever, but she also knows with that, hey, I came on here to do this for my family. Right. And it's not necessarily about winning. It's about being on TV. And that'd be cool to have my kids and my family see me on TV. Right. And not so much about what I was, but what I am now. And so to have a moment that could have been very embarrassing in terms of, oh, she had a terrible performance in the elimination. She's going to be the first person to go home. Instead, Ayanna turns it into this thing where she's like, no, you're not going out like that. We're going to finish this. We're going to do this together. And they pull it together. And I'm sitting there watching it. I'm like, that's really cool. That was really cool. What do you think?
It was so cool. And I mean, I'm going to say it, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think the MVP is going to be unanimous this week. I don't see how it could be anyone other than Ayanna. Just not only the way she carried herself with who she wants to go up against, which I think is, I mean, we already discussed, was the exact right thing to do. She absolutely beast moded in terms of the competition, the elimination. And also, one thing we haven't touched on, which I really respect, is she and Nehemiah are in elimination because she screwed up in the daily competition, because she fell into the water. Like, it's on her.
Mm-hmm.
At no point did she make any excuses for herself. Like, she just owned it. And then, to cap it all off, to be so classy and respectful of Leah, who, I mean, I'm not saying that Leah would have beat her, but Leah was undone by a carabiner. Like this looked way more lopsided than it should be, because she couldn't figure out like that little device. Like, I mean, just top to bottom, a great performance from Ayanna. And I really I don't remember her at all from earlier seasons of the challenge. It's sort of before when I really got into the challenge, and like I went back and had watched some old ones, but I don't particularly remember her. I was really blown away by her in this scene in all episodes.
Yeah. Like I thought it was a really cool moment. And then the thing that got me, and I'm interested to hear your opinion on it though, was seeing the reactions from the cast, because I was watching and I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is awesome. They're having the group hug and you see Kendall crying. I think you saw Katie crying. Did I see Latarian kind of wipe a tear away? You know what I mean? Like you could see that it mattered. Right. And I think that's really cool. I thought that was really cool. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't touch on it, but I was struck by how Latarian seems to have chilled out a little bit. Like he came in last season with a big chip on his shoulder and seemed like pretty standoffish with everyone. Mm-hmm. But he seems a little softer. He seems a little warmer. A little less guarded. Well, yeah, a little Laterre Bear. I forgot about that.
How could you forget about Laterre Bear? Come on, man.
But there's someone else that we need to circle back on. God help us. Okay. Derek K has all the looks of a man who I think he knows he fucked up.
Well, yeah.
Like I mean, it's a slam dunk who the MVP is. I think he's obviously the LVP.
Ooh. Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? Between his ridiculous upset over being dissed on his outfit. But also,
I mean, it wasn't a good play. But now Nehemiah is going to be coming for you. You already just showed that Nehemiah clearly has more friends in the house because all his friends voted for what he wanted to happen. So that's not a good look for Derek, right? So yeah, he misplayed his hand, and luckily for him, the game will still come down to, can you win a daily? And if you win the daily, then it doesn't matter. Now, if you lose, I mean, that's when stuff's going to go down. So, yeah, not a good play for Derek.
Not a good play for Derek. And also, Nehemiah might be able to talk the Team Cancun clique, Real World Cancun. He might be able to talk them into saying, hey, Derek Chavez's elimination is on Derek K. It's not on me.
Yeah.
And then you got real problems if you're Derek. Derek K. I'm sorry to see Derek Chavez go. I am not sorry that there's only one Derek in the house now. It's going to make our lives a lot easier. Which I'm grateful for.
For sure.
I don't think we've said it. Maybe I've forgotten, but what was your line of the episode?
My line of the episode actually is from another song, and they were playing "The Wind Beneath My Wings" during that last moment there with the whole Drake. I just thought that was really funny because there's so many different ways you could go with that, and that song to me was like, it summed up the moment, but it was also kind of like a wink Do you know what I mean? Because it's kind of funny at the same time. And I just thought that was perfectly placed. So that's my line of the episode. But I'm cheating because I just wanted to mention another song.
I think I already said my line of the episode was Ayanna being like, hey, you know, you don't get to choose who you run against. I'm not going to choose who I'm going to compete against, because it's just like, it's just such a G check. Just like, yep, like, let's do this. I like my chances. Where can the good people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And of course, like, subscribe to the YouTube page. Find us, just search You Killed It Podcast or On Blast Podcast, or my name, Sheldon Alexander. Lots of stuff going on there and on the On Blast Network. We got, as mentioned, football picks, gambling pod going up, DRF Sports. Like and follow us there. Lots going on for sure. As I know there's lots going on with you as well, my friend.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at J Chidley Hill, and on TikTok at Jesus Chuttlesworth. And as Sheldon just alluded to, one thing that Sheldon and I have to contend with is in 2 weeks, I'm going to be going to China for the Beijing Olympics. So we're going to be recording episodes in advance. So you guys get your weekly fix of You Killed It. But that also means it's going to be a challenge for us, no pun intended, to take questions from you, the listeners. So we're putting the questions out there.
It just means that we're gonna have an on-demand where we just read comments at the end of this.
Okay.
Whatever we do, after we're done the season, we'll read viewer comments at the very end. We'll do an episode of just that. I just made that up right now on the fly.
That's a good solution, and I like it. And also, I'd like to think, pretty good at replying to people. If you tweet at us, if you message us on Instagram. So keep doing that. I'm just saying it'll be a little funky how we address it on air, because we're going to be creating a backlog of these. So we're going to try to work them in when we can, but we're going to be using the magic of the internet to have regular content when I'm on another continent. Hard to say content and then continent. Anyway, until next week, this was You Killed It.
You Killed It.
On blast.